Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here to the Launchpad, or maybe good morning or evening, depending where you're joining us from. Welcome back to the Launchpad Network. My name is Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad Network, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. And it is great to be back with all of you here today for Starship Flight Test 9 from the beautiful Starbase, Texas, the official city, Starbase, Texas now. First and foremost, I just want to say a huge, huge thank you to everyone for their patience and their kindness and all of your words and support over the last month. It has been quite a journey, and it'll be a journey of a lifetime moving forward and learning to navigate the loss of my grandfather. But he would want me to be here and be with you guys and do what I love and do what he supported us starting. TLP wouldn't have been possible without his support from really day one. And I'm so grateful to get to be here. So today we're dedicating this stream to him. And we're excited to talk a little bit more about that later in the stream as well, on how you guys can support making sure his legacy is remembered, but also taking the time to be prepared and being trained in CPR. But thank you so much to everyone's support over the last month. An incredible, huge thank you to my entire team, the TLP crew who stepped in and asked where they could help in everything they could do. Lewis stepping up and running streams. So we tried not to miss anything while I stepped away to be at my family's side and my grandfather's bedside and just not being having to worry about work. So thank you to Lewis, to our mods that were always in the chat at crazy hours of the day, to the entire team. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't thank you enough. But we're glad to have so many of you joining us here live today from literally all over the world. We're already seeing it in the chat. If you haven't yet, take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. We got John in Central Texas, Edward is in Switzerland, Princess is in Canada, We got Miroslav in Poland. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Hector's in Bavaria. It's great to have you here. Take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. And if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging me at the Launchpad, and I will work on answering those live. As you can see at the bottom of your screen, we are now 1 hour, 46 minutes, 15 seconds away from the opening of Starship Flight Test 9's launch window. It's amazing to be back, ready for another flight. And the big question today, does the second stage get past that 8-minute, 20, 30-second mark? And does it ultimately, a new video came out just an hour or so ago from Elon Musk with the Everyday Astronaut, and he calls this mission the tile mission. It is all about the tiles. And do we see more of these tiles come off of Starship? Do we see another grand explosion over the Caribbean? This is a full intact tile that exploded as part of Flight 7. Was recovered in the Turks and Caicos. So honored to have this in our studio, in our facility, being able to just hold a piece of history of this early Starship program that we'll have there. So it's normally in a box, but wanted to bring it out there so you guys can see just the detail that's still left on this after exploding literally in space and then coming back down. It's incredible how fragile these are, but how durable they are too. So we're excited to see how the tiles hold up here today and hopefully go for a re-entry down closer to Australia as we get closer and closer to some of those ever important milestones to help support the Artemis mission and then hopefully get the first people off to Mars. Lots of people tuning in from around the world. We got Colin in Krakow, Poland. Ginger's in Lakewood, Washington. Distant Horizon is in Chicago, Illinois. We got Darkness in Malaysia. Mark's in Milton, Indiana, I believe that is. Roy's in Central Texas. We got Megalodon in Spain. Cat Mom's in Israel. We got Fabio in Brazil. Welcome. We got DWJ is in Sydney, Australia. Clever Collectibles is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Jason's in Crossville, Tennessee. We got John in Central Texas. And let's see, we got Germany. I just lost your name. We see Germany. We see Craig in South Carolina. Great to have you here with us as well. We got Chris in New Jersey. We got Al in Hyperbad, India. Welcome. The Truthful One is in New York. Cram's in France. Rick's in Connecticut. We got Cali Girl in Northern California. 10 of 9 is in Seguin, Texas. Sorry if I said that wrong. Soul is in North Wales. Chaz is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We got RC in the UK as well. We got Matthew in Minnesota. Great to have you here. I know we got David in Ireland as well. We got the entire TOP crew scattered around the world as we continue to expand our TOP crew, bringing you even better coverage of everything space from around the world. We got some big plans for this year, and we're not slowing down. We had a slight pause, but we're going to get back going and getting more of these exciting things out to you guys as we continue to strive to be your number one source for everything space news and live launch coverage from around the world. You are looking at live views from our very own TOP cameras down at Starbase, Texas, as we count down now 1 hour, 43 minutes, and counting till launch. You can see that large cloud of smoke on the bottom left of the bigger screen there. Many joke that it kind of looks like the Pope vent. That went off about an hour ago and is a great sign that they are spooling up the tank farm, getting ready to begin that propellant loading process. On the timeline of events, that go, no go from the flight director for propellant load is now just under 30 minutes away. If we get a go for propellant loading at T-minus 51 minutes, 37 seconds, the second stage, the ship will begin loading its liquid oxygen. At T-minus 45 seconds, or 45 minutes, 20 seconds, the ship will then begin loading its liquid methane. A few minutes later, that is when the booster will begin loading its fuel, and then at T-minus 35 minutes, 52 seconds, the booster will receive its liquid oxygen. So it is a detailed process that will run through us all the way to T0 when liftoff is guaranteed. It's an exciting day in the Starship program, the first reflight of a Starship Super Heavy booster. Can you believe that we are already at this major milestone? Now, this booster will not be attempting to come back to the landing site today, so this will be its second and final flight of this booster as it will attempt to splash down in the Gulf of America, completing its flight, where they will actually simulate a different type of landing to learn more on how well these boosters perform, to help learn and develop these boosters into a more safe, reliable launch vehicle. The big question: how does the Starship stage separation and second stage burn go? In today's flight, if we get through those first big milestones that we haven't been able to clear on the last two flights, there is going to be a payload deployed demo at T plus 18 minutes, 26 seconds into flight, a Raptor relight demo at T plus 37 minutes, 49 seconds into flight. And this is to simulate igniting an engine to be able to take Starship out of orbit. Again, we are not going into a full orbit burn here today. We're going to go just shy of it, but they are going to relight that Raptor engine to symbolize, if they had gone to orbit, that they could slow down and re-enter the atmosphere. Re-entry set to begin at T plus 47 minutes 50 seconds, with the landing belly flop occurring at T plus 1 hour 6 minutes, with an exciting landing at 1 hour 6 minutes 38 seconds into flight. And shortly after that, we are expecting to hear from Elon Musk on an update on the plans and strategies to make life multi-planetary. He was supposed to give a Starship update this morning. They did decide very last minute to delay that until after today's flight. No really known reason on why, but I think it's not a bad idea to see how today goes and then speak on how today went and on that future plans. I think that also maybe shows that there's some confidence on how today's flight will proceed. But it's going to be an exciting day, so make sure you stick around after the launch. There's going to be lots of things happening through the coast phase and these demos that will be occurring while it is in space before that always incredible kind of 20-25 minutes of reentry with those incredible views provided by Starlink. Now, as always, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging me at the Launchpad. I'll work on answering those live while we continue through today's stream. Bear with me with my voice. I have actually come down with a little bit of something, which is probably to be expected after spending 2 weeks in ICU with family and then running around for 2 weeks like crazy and not really sleeping. So bear with me there. I've got lots of fluids and we're ready to go for today. So we're going to continue to answer your guys' questions. We got current sick guy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Brian's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We got Marlon in South Africa. Star Strikers watching from South Carolina. Welcome. Great to have you here. Missy, Zach, that looks like the polystyrene foam material that was used in the Adidas Quastra 1994 World Cup in the U.S. during Apollo 11. That is interesting. I have never actually looked into that. It is a really interesting material, and it's kind of hard to describe because now, having held a tile from Starship Flight 1, it's currently secure in our Florida studio, but having this one here, this one is smaller than the Flight 1 tile that I have because it doesn't have the point on the bottom, but this one's heavier. This one definitely has a bit more weight to it. It's not carved out on the back where the Flight Tile 1 is. Now, this comes from a different section. This was most likely from an area around one of the flaps, where my Starship Flight 1 tile is more just like a generic general area on Starship. This one's more specific because of its shape and size, but it's definitely denser. You can see on the back, those are the 3 mounting points where they are able to attach on to the Starship there, and they do still have those attachments in there kind of fused in that you can see there. And then that black outer material is a very thin outer material that is on the outside there, as well as we're not entirely sure if this is some of the ablative or some of the glue that they use that is still burnt onto kind of the sides there. So amazing to get to see some of this program. I'm always handling these very carefully when they're not in their safety box. But holding a piece of history like that that's literally been to space and come back in a glorious test explosion of the Starship program, we're honored to have that here. As always, though, if you guys do happen to take photos or videos of today's flight or any launch around the world, make sure you send them to us on social media on X, TLPN_official, or in our community Discord. It's where our community hangs out in between streams. I'm working on some members only stuff as well as some more community hangouts as well, as we love just getting to know you guys, the community. We wouldn't get to do this without you guys, so we'd love to hang out with you guys a bit more while we rebuild some of the Lego sets for the Canada studio. Paul Batron, thank you so much for that generous super chat. Nice to see you back, Zach. I appreciate that, Paul. Your support pre my step away for a bit and through the step really, really did help keep things going. And I appreciate that. I know that's not your first one today. So thank you so, so much. Catching up on some of the questions you guys sent in, make sure you're tagging us at the Launchpad and we'll work on answering those live. Tyler Becker's asking, how much does the tile weigh, would you estimate? Ooh, I have a scale upstairs. I'll see if I can get it when I go refill my fluids. It's not a pound. They're light. See, this is a funny way of describing them. Think of styrofoam, but like a really dense styrofoam that like you put like flowers in, kind of thing. Like, so it feels really dense and hard, but it's very light. And that's the best way to kind of describe a Starship tile. It feels really firm. Like I can't, if I went like this, it's not going to push in unless I put a lot of force to do that, which I'm not going to do. But it doesn't feel like it wouldn't be hard to just snap it in two. So we're going to be very, very careful to not do that. Catching up on the questions you are sending in there. John the Beagle Dad, can anyone tell me what the weather will be like in about an hour from now? We had it up on the screen here. I'll bring it back up over top of my face here just for a moment. We are monitoring live input coming in from the GOES weather satellites. We've actually covered the launch of these satellites. And it looks like the weather in the Gulf is clearing up on the far left side of that weather screen. That's where Starbase Texas is. And we kind of drawing a straight line to about the 4 to 5 o'clock side of that image. There was some weather there you saw earlier in the day, but it does look like it's clearing up pretty good today. We do have a little bit of haze as usual down at Starbase, but definitely not near the worst weather that we've ever seen. And we've seen them launch in way worse. So things continuing to look really promising for today's flight test 9. Rachel Learman, how many flights do you think it will take till we have a successful flight? See, that's a hard one, Rachel, because I would say almost all of these flights have been successful in the scheme of they've said for the last multiple test flights, integrated flights, especially the version 2 flights, that the outcomes of the flight is the data. So getting off the ground, anything after that is success because they're getting more data on this vehicle. Keep in mind, this is the largest vehicle that's ever been made, the most powerful vehicle that's been ever made, provides the most thrust. It is the heaviest vehicle that's ever been launched. It hits all these milestones, and then we're going to try to catch the booster, which every time they've attempted to do a catch and said go for catch, it's worked. The times that they've said don't go for catch, they weren't confident in the catch, and they protected the launch site. The ship, we haven't done a catch attempt yet because we aren't at that point. We need to prove reentry first before we risk bringing it back over the United States. The other thing with that, we were talking as a team, your reentry windows occur every 12 hours generally for these type of launch vehicles. Now, keep in mind, depending which way you're coming into Starbase after a liftoff, the reentry would actually occur from a southwest to northeast trajectory or a northeast to southwest trajectory. If it was a northwest to southeast trajectory coming in this way to Starbase, you're flying over the United States during reentry. They're not going to risk a Starship not making it through reentry until they're really confident in that to bring it back to Starbase. But I expect we'll probably see that later this year if things continue to go. All of these failed missions that the media has been trying to call these and hype these up to being, these were all a big jump forward into V2 of the vehicle. It got taller, it got sleeker, it got new flaps, it got new engines, new avionics. And SpaceX has now come out and said the reasons 7 and 8 failed were different reasons. So they've learned, they've improved, and now they're back here out at the pad ready to go again. And that's just the difference of a private launch provider versus a government provider. A private launch provider can blow things up, test, learn, and repeat. A government agency would have backlash of that's wasting money, but that's also why it takes them way longer to get a vehicle out on the pad. SLS has been in development for years longer than Starship, and Starship's here ready for its ninth flight, not including all the hops that occurred prior to that. SLS has only ever flown once. So we'll see how today goes. Hopefully, it will be a full success that no matter how you look at it, it's a success. But if they get off the pad, it's a success. Catching up on the chat here. Christopher Glisson, not a question, but I think I speak for everyone here when I say our condolences are with you and your family. Thank you, Christopher. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's been incredible the support that has come from the entire community during this time. You know, I try not to overshare too much personal, but my grandpa was basically acted as my dad and raised me. I wouldn't be doing TLP if it wasn't for him. He was definitely a reason I got into space and got to talk to the space station as a kid, actually from this room as a ham radio operator, and talk to the space shuttle. And yeah, it's cool getting to continue his legacy in a slightly different way, but still, you know, looking to the stars and always wanting to ever be learning and challenging what we know and learning more and expanding the human mindset. He was always about learning. So it's always exciting to be able to do that and honor him in that way. Steve, I thought it had some kind of base that is ceramic for those shields. I'm not sure that. So they do have an ablative that they've now added, Steve, under these tiles onto the ship. That is more like what they had on shuttle, which it's kind of a, I don't want to say it's a fabric per se, but Dragon has it too, but it burns off. So it's a material that they put on it under the tiles that can burn off if the tile falls off. Elon spoke today to the everyday astronaut saying, ultimately, if they can't figure out how to get the tiles to stay on the ship, these ships will never be rapidly reusable, which means land, roll to the pad, restack, and launch within an hour or two max. If they have to examine all the tiles and replace more than one tile kind of thing, these aren't going to be rapidly reusable vehicles, and that's ultimately the goal. Catching up on the chat. Thank you so much, Rachel. I appreciate that. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. Christopher, are we going to have any audio from the SpaceX stream, or do they still not like that? We will, of course, patch in SpaceX's feed and the Elon event when those happen. The only time we mute their audio is if they're playing copywritten music during like their coast phases or their intro video. But if there's mission control audio to be heard, we will be playing that and listening into that live on the air with all of you. I'm going to take a very, very quick commentary break, refill some of the fluids as we get ready. We're now less than an hour away from when SpaceX is set to begin their live coverage. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage the like button, share out the stream, invite more people to join us, and stay with us right here on the launch pad as we count down to the historic 9th flight test of the Starship program. Stay with us right here on the launch pad. And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the Launchpad and our live countdown to launch coverage of SpaceX Starship Flight 9 from Starbase, Texas. We're at L minus 1 hour, 15 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting. And there is the first vents coming now from the Mechazilla Tower on the center of your screen. A great sign that we are proceeding through that go, no go for propellant loading and proceeding towards preparing the tower and the pad to begin loading liquid oxygen and liquid methane onto both the ship and the booster in preparation for liftoff here today. We do have a 60-minute launch window, that window opening 1 hour, 15 minutes from now. Last we heard, SpaceX continuing to target the opening of that 1 hour window for today's flight. But as always, they can push that T0 if they need to just a little bit. But seeing that big vent from the tower, another great sign that we are continuing through the milestones of events here today. As always, if you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll work on answering those live. I know we had a few of them while I took a quick commentary break there, so we are going to catch up on those. Channel 1969 just joined the Discord. Welcome. Great to have you there. Steve Lancaster, out of interest, are you into or practice amateur rocketry? I find it fascinating that even these small scale rockets are getting closer and closer to techniques like gimbaling and etc. Even self landing. I've seen some of them. I haven't had the time to, Steve. It is definitely something I would love to do. I did some model launches when I was a younger kid during science camps and stuff with my family. Always really enjoyed that, but it's been probably decades at this point since the last one that I've been able to do, but something we definitely have looked at seeing if there's a way that TLP could partner in with some universities or other things to hopefully be able to do that with you guys in the future. So stay tuned for that. We'll see what we'll be able to do. L minus 1 hour, 13 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting to launch. If you haven't yet, though, take a moment, engage that like button. It's free to do, and it really does help us out. And share out the stream and invite people to join us. We, of course, will be patching in SpaceX Mission Control for live commentary as we get closer to that T0 liftoff. We're expecting their commentary to begin 30 minutes prior to launch. So once we have that, we will patch in their live audio and views while continuing to watch from our very own TLP cameras down at Starbase, Texas. I will make a quick note for those that have joined us on some of the previous flights. You might notice we don't have our ultra zoomed in camera that got us really, really tight views onto the ship and booster there. I know I saw a couple of people asking for it. Unfortunately, that camera decided to retire itself a little early. So we are looking at options on what we can do to hopefully get a replacement on for it for hopefully flight 10 or something as we continue to expand our coverage, not only at Starbase, but at the Space Coast and around the world to bring you live 24/7 coverage of the space industry. So a quick little programming note there for those that are waiting for me to turn on that ultra close camera. Unfortunately, we don't have it for this one, but hopefully for the next one we will. If you haven't yet, take a moment, let us know in the chat as well where you're watching from. We got people tuning in from absolutely all over the world, and we're glad to have you joining us live here. If you haven't yet, join our TLP Discord. It's where our community hangs out in between streams. We'd love to see you there. We do have comms channels where you can either type chat or use audio and video to hang out with the space community when we're doing live streams or during off hours. And it's always great to be able to jump in there, see you guys sometimes during streams and during the off hours and just talk about the latest in space exploration. It's an exciting time to be alive. Catching up on the questions that you guys have, you can keep sending those in the chat. Rachel Lehman asked, how many astronauts have you met at the launch pad? Ooh, in person or Zoom? Does Zoom count? And do they have to have flown, or can they be like astronaut trainees, but they're ready to fly but haven't? Because that will change the number dramatically. That I've actually met in person. I'm probably at like 10 or 12. That I've been in the room with is over 20, over 2 dozen. Because I was at a Hall of Fame event that had like almost 3 dozen astronauts at it. Some Apollo ones too. That was really cool. So like have been around and in the presence of 30, 40 probably, but have actually met or had a conversation with a dozen, somewhere around there. I've talked to also the last group of astronauts from NASA. I got to speak to a number of them when they were selected to officially begin their full training. That was really cool to speak to them on the day of their announcement of being selected as the next NASA astronaut candidates. Yeah, it's been cool to get to talk to so many different people. And some are interviews, and some were just really casual moments where we were in the same place at the same time, and just got to talk to them in a way almost like peers. Just talk about the joys of space. So that's always been really, really cool. I think one of the ones that I remember the most was meeting one of the Canadian astronauts that was also our former Governor General, representing Her Majesty the Queen to Canada. And we got to talk to her. And this was after the Queen's um, passing, and getting to talk about her meeting with the Queen and talking about her time at the space station, and her gifting Her Majesty a picture of Buckingham Palace and her other homes from the space station that she had taken, and that being kind of her tradition. So that was a really cool kind of moment that just isn't something normally an astronaut would be asked about or talk about. It was neat to have that kind of moment of connection there. If you're just joining us, though, welcome. We're glad to have you here. We are counting down now, just 1 hour, 8 minutes, 54 seconds till launch. That tower vent continuing to get larger and larger. Another sign that things are continuing to progress towards liftoff here today. We are keeping an eye on SpaceX's live stream updates as well via their social media as things continue towards today's liftoff. It is a 1 hour launch window that they have here today. An hour ago, they said they're counting down to the opening of that window at 6:30 p.m. Central Time or Starbase time. They will begin their live coverage 30 minutes prior to liftoff here, and that's of course when we will patch them in as well. Denise said the Peggy Whitson interview was great. Yeah, Peggy was awesome. It was really, really cool. Denise loves it with Mark Kelly. That was a very, very brief connection with Mark Kelly, but it was a really special one to get to be there at his induction to the Hall of Fame and spend some time with him and the other inductee privately in a room with some, I think it was some naval cadets, and there was like 3 or 4 of us in media. It was a really last minute arranged thing, but that's one of the fun things in the space industry is that you just kind of go with the flow and you never know who you get to spend some time with and just get to know them. And I think that's one of the things we try to make sure when we are given those opportunities. I, of course, want to share as much of those as I can with you guys, but it's also important to know that these people are people too. They don't always want a camera and a mic shoved in their face. And, we want to respect and honor that. And, if we can get 30 seconds with someone and it's not a full interview, we're going to cherish that and hopefully can do an interview with them in the future after that. Strickler, maybe someday there will be a McDonald's in space. That is an interesting question, actually. I've seen that posed before. And you guys can let us know in the chat. What do you think will be the first chain franchise brand that is like in operations either in low Earth orbit or the moon or on the Mars? Whenever we get to that milestone, what chain franchise do you think will be first? Are we thinking McDonald's, Subway, Dollar General, Waffle House? Let me know in the chat what you think there. We do know things like Doritos, Pepsi, Coke, they've gone up to space before, but like an actual operational, staff run their type of store in space. That'll be interesting to see. Number of people saying Dollar General. Yeah, absolutely. Sagasus? Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Love your channel, Zach. Greetings from Norway. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thanks for being here. We now have confirmation of the OLM venting as well. Another sign that we are heading towards that ship locks load. Ship locks load should begin at T-minus 51 minutes, 37 seconds in the count. So we are now just over about 12 minutes away from propellant loading beginning for Starship Flight Test 9. Distant Horizon says Starbucks, just because that would be pretty good. So does Ricky. Number of people say dollar store. Crazy train, a space Mac. Ooh, that'd be a good idea. Catching up on the chat here. Taco Bell, maybe. Amazon, definitely. I mean, once they start launching Project Kuiper, I guess that's the product that's in space. Not really a retail store, but yeah, sort of. Be interesting to see. Nigel Moore, what radius of civil aerospace is diverted during the launch? So that's a really great question. And just with everything going on family wise, I didn't get to make all the maps I normally would for us. So I apologize on that. But there are large regions of NOTAMs. Those are notice to air mariners. There's also ones for ships. That are in the Gulf or the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean. So there's large areas of air and water space that are blocked out, and those would be probably going into effect right about now. That those areas will have to be cleared, if not already in that fact, because some of the areas are quite large, and it would take some time to clear them. But these notices go out days in advance, and it says from this time to this time, based on these coordinates, you cannot be anywhere within those coordinates. And there's a large stretch from Starbase all the way through the Caribbean out into the Atlantic Ocean, and then another large stretch curving up into the Atlantic Ocean towards Australia that no one can be flying in, boating in, shipping in, swimming in during this type of thing. And if they were to detect someone was in that range, that actually could violate conditions for launch. More so, we find that closer to the launch area where they can actually have Coast Guard or their own support vessels out monitoring, making sure nobody in a canoe or a private little boat out taking photos is in the way. But things like cruise ships, they have to be aware of these areas, especially going through the Caribbean, make sure those are all cleared. During Flight 7 and 8, when we had the anomalies in flight, a much larger aerospace area was emergency declared, and flights were diverted immediately away from the region and put into holding patterns until they were able to either continue to the original airport or be diverted to another airport for a safe landing. Christopher, what factors are looked at with go, no go polls? That is another great question there. Christopher, we don't have the exact go, no go for Starship at this time, but we do know what goes into them and previously. So you're going to have everything. ULA gives us a really great idea of this. So does Rocket Lab. You're going to go into all of the avionics teams, checking all the systems for that. You're going to go into the teams checking the flaps, the grid fins. You're going to check fuel, liquid oxygen team, the methane team. You got the team clearing the pad, the team clearing the airspace, the team clearing the range, the downrange, the recovery area. You'd have launch control. You'd have a weather person saying yes or no for the weather. That even includes solar weather. They do have to monitor solar weather conditions for flights like this, more specifically if they were going to orbit, but it is something they keep an eye on. And all of those different teams have to give a go. And then normally these teams have sub teams that give go no goes, and then there's a full team like avionics go, and then they go through some of the ship, and then it's ship is go for it. Every company does them slightly differently, but it is a process that's not quick. It's generally a good minute or two that you're actually just going yes, go, go. We don't normally get to hear it with SpaceX until the final go for launches with the launch directors. But we should be well now into that go, no go. Based on the OLM event and the tower event, we are assuming that they are go for propellant loading. And we should now be about 8-9 minutes away from that first bit of liquid oxygen being loaded onto Starship S-35, ready for today's flight. Pineapple, I am new to SpaceX. Can you please explain what the Starship program is going to accomplish after testing? Absolutely. Well, welcome, Pineapple. It's great to have you here. Ask as many questions as you want. That is why we're here to help answer those, because if you're wondering it, someone else is too. Starship is a vehicle that's been designed to make humanity multiplanetary. And what that means is it is designed to be able to send large amounts of payload to the moon and to Mars and beyond so that we can actually establish a presence on the moon, but more importantly, Mars, that eventually within our lifetime, is the hope, will be self-sufficient. That if recovery ships or support ships from Earth stop coming, that Mars will be fully self-dependent. They will be able to produce their own food and water, and be able to become a civilization on Mars, independent from Earth. And that is when humanity will be fully, truly multiplanetary. Elon actually talked about this in his quick chat with Everyday Astronaut today, that just because we get people to Mars and they're living on Mars doesn't mean we're multiplanetary. We're not multiplanetary until they can survive with no support from Earth indefinitely or forever. That's when we truly have become a multiplanetary species, because we are living and surviving and thriving on another planet. It's going to take us a while to get there. He talked a bit about the price of getting something. Right now, it costs on average about $1 billion per ton to send something to Mars. He wants to see that folded by a magnitude of, even getting down to $1 million a ton would be a huge improvement, but it's still $1 million a ton. He wants to see a goal of getting it down to $100,000 per ton or less, and that's what's going to be required to make humanity multiplanetary. We'll probably hear Elon speak more on this. There is a keynote event that was supposed to take place this morning. It got delayed to after today's launch. So once we have liftoff, don't head anywhere. We've got lots of milestones during today's test flight, and then immediately after, we will be covering the Elon update following the Starship Flight test. Should they still go ahead with that update tonight on how today's flight went and the future of making life multiplanetary. Super, super exciting time to be alive. Pineapple, why do they say go SpaceX, go Starship? Every company does it differently. Sometimes ULA says go Atlas, go Centaur, go whatever the mission is. It's kind of their final checklist of go of this stage, go of this stage, like first stage, go second stage, go the mission, then they fly. SpaceX does it a little differently. Go the company, go the ship. Sometimes they'll say go the mission. So that is all just part of their culture and their community that has been built around these. RUD is a rapidly unscheduled disassembly, or we call them RUDs. That is basically what causes starships to explode and lets people like me have a tile that exploded off of Starship. This was from Flight 7 when it exploded over Turks and Caicos. This went to space and came back down, and honored to have this in my personal collection there to bring out for special flights like this. Try not to manhandle it all too much. Crazy Train, did you see a space shuttle? I never saw a shuttle fly in person. I did see the bottom of an SRB and the fin of a shuttle, a right wing of the shuttle in the VAB when I was a kid at Kennedy, but we never got to see it fly in person. But I did watch almost every shuttle from the time of maybe 2.5, 3 years old till its retirement. I watched. Was a huge space fan as a kid. And if you stay tuned, I have a little video I'll play a little later about something dear to my heart that I'm encouraging everyone to take the time to do. And there's a picture in there from when I was a kid at Kennedy that you can see. So stay tuned for that in a little bit. Paul, Zach, can you tell us about the hot stage ring change? Yeah, so we are still using a changeable hot staging ring. Forgive me again, my models are in the States right now. We're working on transitioning everything back here. But there's the booster, and then there's a hot staging ring, and then the ship on top. And the hot staging ring allows the ship to ignite its engines while still attached to the booster and then push itself away from the ship, but without cooking the booster too much. Then the hot stage ring is jettisoned. We've actually found out that the hot stage ring from Flight 7, I believe it is, was pulled out of the ocean and has actually now been cut up and been gifted to employees. There's one of 3,500 little chunks that have been gifted to employees as a thank you for being part of the program. So a neat thing that's been part of that. Long run, and not that long run, we're going to see them transition into kind of version 2 or version 3 of the booster, where the hot staging ring will no longer be jettisonable. It'll actually be a fixed part of the booster. And we saw our first sneak peeks at it earlier today in the video from Everyday Astronaut with Elon Musk. In the back right corner, you could see just a peek out of a hot stage ring on top of a few other stacked rings for a future booster. So we kind of got our first little glimpses at what that'll look like. But they're changing it, so it's one less thing that could fail. It's a more permanent fix to the solution that they know that they need. So we'll know more in the coming weeks and months, and we might even get to learn more later tonight with the Elon update. Christopher Gleason, when I was a kid growing up in Florida, I could go out to the yard and watch the shuttle launches. Oh, that's so cool. So jealous. Air Force vet, why don't they bring the second stage through the atmosphere like they do with the booster with an entry burn? A few different reasons. One, you would need more propellant. So rather than just using the weight and the size of the ship to slow down, you then have to flip it more and produce a burn, but then you need to rotate again to land differently. So it uses a lot more propellant. You need to be structurally a bit different to do that as well. In theory, yes, would it be possible? Probably. But for this type of vehicle, they see that the belly flop maneuver and the aero braking maneuver is far more effective than bringing it in like a Falcon 9, where they flip around, burn, and then land. Well, that is a great question there. Thanks for sending that in, Air Force Vet. Appreciate that. Catching up on your guys' comments and questions in the chat. You can send those in the tag me in your questions by tagging me at the Launchpad. If you haven't yet, though, take a moment, share out the stream, to invite people to join us for today's flight. 53 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. We are now just 2 minutes exactly now away from the beginning of ship liquid oxygen loading on to Starship S-35. Paul, New York City beat, been off the grid, you're moving back to Canada, question mark. Yeah, I guess I never have put out this kind of update. I had ultimately made the decision prior to uh, the events with my grandfather and his passing. But at this point, the right call, even prior to that, but especially now, is to come back to Canada for now. I'll still be out in the field, going to as many Starship launches, of course, being down on site for Artemis and those type of flights. But at this point, I need to be here for my grandmother and supporting her, and as she navigates this change. And being in Canada opens some more doors that I'll dive into it more in probably a video or Q&A or something at another point. But ultimately, the cost of me living in Florida is eating so much funds that TLP has other opportunities that if we had those funds available, we could be doing more for you guys. Producing more content, being live on location more, expanding our coverage better, having bigger productions for actual live broadcasting with graphics and animations, and just expanding and bringing you guys an even higher level of quality of stuff. And the only trade off really is I don't get to look out my window to watch a 3 a.m. Starlink. Yeah, I won't see every mission like I would if I was in Florida. But personally, I need to be home right now. And professionally, removing the personal want of seeing every Starlink at 3 in the morning, I'll still get to be there for the most important stuff, for the big Starship flights, for the Artemis flights, crew flights. It doesn't mean I can't be down in Florida every month or every other month. But it just financially makes a lot more sense to be back at home base and see where we lead. Maybe in a year or two that changes. We're back in Florida, but at this point, yeah, I do. I have to come home for now. So it's important to do. We are at that point where I can click this button. We should be at the point. We'll wait to see if we get notification from SpaceX on if we have had confirmation. Let's see. 14 minutes ago, the Starship team has pulled go for propellant loading, which means we can click this button. We are officially in propellant loading of Starship S-35's liquid oxygen. The next milestone will be the beginning of liquid methane fueling. We're expecting that to occur about 5.5 minutes from now as we start to tick through these last 50 minutes of the launch countdown. Matthew Chesterton, thank you so much for being a member for 12 months. I appreciate that. Enjoy the new helmet color. And Paul, thank you so much for that super chat there. Well, good luck. Family is more important. I appreciate that, Paul. And yeah, something told me my grandfather saved me in December. Many of you know that story of my own health scare. And something told me to come home in March. And I'm thankful that I listened. I came home in March and I was here when he needed me in April. And I had already made the decision, come back home for another year and then reevaluate in a year or two and go from there. Doesn't change what I get to do with TLP. And that's one of the biggest gifts of you guys watching TLP is I can do this from anywhere in the world. And with the incredible team of rocket chasers and crew that we have here at TLP and that crew expanding to bring you even better coverage, I'm one of the luckiest people in the world that I get to do this and do it from where I need to be at the time and be part of a community like I am with you guys. So we're excited for that. We're excited to be looking at other things, not just the US for rocketry. There is a lot happening around the world. We've got some open doors we're excited to be looking at, taking you around the world to other launch sites that others are not necessarily covering. So definitely stay tuned to all of that. If you haven't yet, though, take a moment, share out the stream, invite people to join us. Catching up on your guys' questions in the chat. Make sure you put that at the Launchpad part. It really does help make sure that we can catch those questions. That nature thing, family first, dude. I appreciate it. That means the world having your guys' support. That we can do that. And Steve George, TOP International. That's exactly right. We've got an international team. We're expanding it more. If you guys want to be part of that team as a rocket chaser, a journalist, launch commentator, joining me on these bigger launches, covering these events, definitely take a moment, fill out the application. Should be rotating in the chat there, or maybe one of the team can ping it there. And I'll be starting up interviews again in the next couple of weeks. And we're excited to have your guys' support in doing all of that. So thank you so much for being part of that as we continue to expand this team for it. I said it again earlier today. I want to make sure I say it again now. There's more people here. A huge thank you to the entire crew for stepping up. As I had to take a step to the side for the last month. Huge thank you to Lewis, who stepped up and made sure that we were able to still cover all of the Starlinks at the crazy hours while I was away, and our mod team being there to support him and making sure that those streams could run while I had to be with my family at that time. So the fact that I have that team and that family, that is so special, and I appreciate it. So thank you to the whole crew. I'm not going to name names because I always forget somebody and then I feel bad, but you guys know who you are, and I appreciate it more than I've said. So, Sunny Blue, $10 super chat. Rest in peace. He will be missed. We all care for you. Never forget that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that support. I appreciate, just all of your guys' support. Today, the last month, and the months and years going forward. I was going to play it a little bit later, but I feel like we're kind of on that tone, and I want us to get excited about the launch. I don't want to keep us on a sad beat, but I appreciate you guys' support. So I am going to take a second here. I'm going to play a quick little video. I'll come back and say another thing, and then we'll dive into the launch here. So bear with me just a second while I pull up this video. And stay with us as we count down to the launch of Starship Flight Test 9. Stay with me. I want to tell you a story, not just about loss, but about love and about the power of being prepared. What if your mom, your best friend, your child, or someone you love collapsed in front of you? No pulse and no breath. Would you know what to do? When my papa, Bruce Aubert, collapsed on April 30th, 2025, I only had seconds to act. Because I had been trained in CPR a decade before I could step in. And that training gave me a chance to step in for my papa when he needed me in his most critical time. Between the CPR I administered and the quick response of first responders with an AED, together we gave him the gift of help and my family the gift of something priceless. 13 and a half more days of memories, of hugs, and of being together. Days to say I love you and days to say goodbye. CPR didn't give my family forever, but it gave us something immeasurable. You don't know if or when you'll be called to step in, but if you are, you'll want to be ready. Not for yourself, but for them, their children, their spouse, their friends, their future. Take the training. Just 8 to 12 hours, that's all it takes to give the gift of time and maybe the gift of life. On your screen now are QR codes for training centers in Canada, the US, UK, and Europe. If you're in another region, just search CPR training near me in the browser of your choice. You may never need to use CPR or an AED, and I hope you don't. But if the day comes, your hands could mean life. Your hands could mean a chance. Do it in memory of my Papa Bruce. Do it for someone you love. Do it for someone you may never meet. Learn CPR. Use an AED. Be someone's hero, just like my Papa was my hero. I love you, Papa. So yeah, I know you're here for a rocket launch, and I appreciate it. Um, but I TLP wouldn't be TLP without Papa. And take those 6, 8, 10 hours. It was amazing the team looking into CPR training for you guys and finding them around the world, and that it's even less now. That some countries, you can do like a 3, 4 hour course just on CPR and AED. I hope you never ever have to use it. It is traumatic to do CPR, but it also can be the gift of days, weeks, months, or years. And the comments that have already been coming in from you guys when we shared this earlier today, it's been amazing hearing the stories of people that have been trained that have also been able to use it. I, by no means, and I want to make sure I say this, in no means think I'm a hero in this situation. I did what I was lucky enough to be trained to do, and I was lucky enough as a son to be able to step in that way. But um, yeah, if you want to support TLP and support my family at this time, um, go learn CPR. Take a day to do it. You never know when you're going to need it. And if you'd like to help remember Papa and his legacy, the 43-year cardiac survivor, guinea pig of cardiac care in Canada, you can learn more about him at the QR code there, or we'll share the GoFundMe link in the chat. We are working to set up a memorial at the Cardiac Center where people can learn that just because you get diagnosed with cardiac disease doesn't mean there isn't hope. When he was first diagnosed, they gave him 5 years at best. And he lived those 5 years, and then he lived those five more, and got 43 years. So there is a hope. There is still life after a diagnosis. And we want to make sure we share his story with more people by creating that memorial in his name. So if you'd like to be part of that, you can donate to the GoFundMe. All of the fundraising from that goes directly into making that memorial possible. TLP is going to match those donations today that come in. So if you'd like to be part of that, TLP will be matching every dollar you guys donate to help make this memorial possible. And I just appreciate, yeah, all of your guys' support, the team, and all of you as we've been navigating this time. TLP wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for Papa. I'm thankful I got to take him on an interview into an ITAR facility, got to see rocket launches, never got to Starbase together, but he's got the best seat in the house for today. So I appreciate your guys' support in that. And I know he would want me to get back to my job. He was a hard worker. So enough of that. Back to Starship. We are at L minus 39 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting, which means we are now just about 4 minutes away from booster liquid oxygen loading beginning on the ship. We need to tick our timeline along a bit more as the ship fuel and liquid oxygen are now loading onto Starship S-35. And you can start to see that frost line on the screen down below me. You can start to see by that bottom flap, that frost line now appearing. And we are excited to be with you as we continue to count down these final 38 minutes. We're about 8 minutes away from when SpaceX will begin their live coverage. And of course, we will be patching them in to be listening in to them as we continue through today's countdown. But in those final 8 minutes until we listen in to mission control, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging me at the launch pad, and we will work on answering those live while we continue through today's stream. But thanks for listening, everyone, and all your comments in the chat. If I don't respond to all of them, it's because I don't want to break down and not be able to cover the launch to the abilities that I know would honor him and what you guys expect and deserve. So I appreciate it, but it's cool. Megalodon in Spain, my private school, every child was trained in CPR for PE. That is something I've already said to my family I want to fight for. That needs to be done everywhere. It is so easy to be trained in it, and you never know when you're going to need it. I have been lucky enough to only had to do actual CPR once, but my emergency first aid training I've had to use other times in other instances, and I don't know why it's not part of high school. Of everything you get taught in high school or even junior high, it really should be part of that curriculum. So that is really awesome to hear, Megalodon, that your school did that in Spain. That is really, really awesome. Cal6, big hugs from Australia. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Craig, the video is great and moving. I appreciate it. The GoFundMe link won't work for you. Let me see if I can get that working, and if not, one of my team will get that for you guys. I know we were testing it earlier, and GoFundMe was having some moods, so I will make sure we drop the full link in the chat. There we go. It is in the chat there for you guys now. If you guys would like to be part of that, I appreciate that. Following along on the countdown, we are now just about a minute away, from less than a minute away now from the beginning of booster fuel load beginning. That's when the liquid methane will begin loading onto the super heavy booster, getting ready to go for its second ever flight. This booster previously flew and was caught by the tower that it's about to launch from again here today. And we're excited to see how that will progress on today's flight. It's amazing that we're already at that point of reflight. And the fact that we're already seeing frost lines on the booster, I'm going to tick us along a little bit earlier than we were thinking, because I think we are already into booster fueling at this point. As we continue through the timeline here today, booster LOX load fueling should now be beginning right at this point. That was my mistake. I missed one of our buttons there. So both liquid oxygen and liquid methane are now flowing onto both the super heavy booster and the Starship S-35 ship in preparation for today's flight. Steve Lancaster, hopefully this isn't a silly question. What's the difference between T minus and L minus? I hope it's not a silly question. It is definitely not. It's an important one. The easiest way of thinking of it is L minus is like live, real world time. So if you see L minus 12 hours, if you come back in 11 hours and 55 minutes and there's been no change, there'll be 5 minutes to launch. If you see T minus 12 hours, you might come back in 11 hours and 55 minutes and there'll still be 4 hours on the clock. And that's because a T minus clock can pause. T minus clock is operational. So we see it more with ULA, but they have set hold periods. With Space Shuttle, we would see a hold at T minus 4 hours, and they would hold there for multiple hours to make sure everything was ready. then they would proceed. So T minus and L minus. At TLP, we try to use L minus as much as we can to give you guys a real world time. That way, you know, if you have time to run and get a coffee or answer the doorbell and things like that. So that's what we try to use to the best of our ability to bring you that coverage of anything that we are covering launch of. Great question, not a silly one at all. The next milestone in today's countdown will be at T minus 19 minutes 40 seconds. That's when Raptor engine chill will begin on both the ship and the booster. In just about 4 minutes time from now is when we expect SpaceX to begin their live broadcast of today's Starship test flight. And we will, of course, patch them in. They have gone live early, so let me patch them in right now. Bear with me.
Flying the Super Heavy booster today, which last flew on Flight 7. The primary objectives for today are very similar to our last two attempts, except for the booster, which, in addition to flying for the second time, has an exciting return journey planned for its return back to Earth.
That's right. It's going to be getting some serious rigor, and pretty important, we are not going to be attempting to catch the booster today. We're going to use this launch to kind of further accelerate the development. We're putting Super Heavy kind of through the ringer, some serious rigor. We're going to go through all of that in just a couple of minutes. We're also hoping to get Ship into space, and it's got a couple of objectives like deploying simulated Starlink satellites and then a range of experiments during its reentry. We're really trying to test the limits, the capabilities of that heat shield, the flaps, the structure, everything about it. Primary payload on this flight, once again, as always, is data.
It's definitely a very big day for both stages. There's always a chance we don't reach every objective that we set for ourselves, but success comes from what we learn on days like today. And of course, whatever happens, excitement is guaranteed.
Yeah, that's right. Progress is not measured by single flight tests. It's whatever that timeline overall is, and getting us closer to establishing self-sustaining civilization on Mars, making life multiplanetary. Every time we're learning something from these flights that will get us there, that is progress.
Exactly. Starship is the first orbital launch vehicle engineered to be fully reusable and built for frequent flight and heavy payloads, just like today's commercial airliners.
It's the product of years of rapid development, testing, iteration. We're trying to fly as frequently as possible, fix problems as they appear, and then fly again. It all started here at Starbase back with Starhopper. It was a small single Raptor prototype, kind of looked like a water tower. We turned it into a water tower eventually. It made its first low altitude hop back in 2019 here at Starbase. You could tell the pad, that's the pad that we were just looking at. It looks dramatically different now, two towers. But Starhopper delivered. It was able to prove that we could use that Raptor engine for controlled takeoff and landing.
And that is so wild to see that there on your screen was just 6 years ago. And now we're here today with a full-size vehicle. So from there, we moved to full-size test articles with increasingly complex test flights that reached progressively higher altitudes. And each test shaped the Starship that we see today on the pad, a stronger, taller, and more refined vehicle.
That's right. All right. Now, let's go out there and meet it. Starship is made up of two parts. First, on the bottom, the Super Heavy booster, powered by 33 Raptor engines. Both Super Heavy and Ship are running on liquid methane and liquid oxygen. That second stage, the Starship upper stage, is powered by 6 of those Raptor engines. 3 of them are optimized to sea level performance, 3 for vacuum, so operating while they're in space. And here's a quick look under the hood at all of those Raptors. On the left, that's a view from underneath the launch mount. That's 33 Raptor engines on the first stage, on the booster. And on the right, that's a view inside of the ship. So you're looking down at the top of the booster at 6 Raptor engines inside the ship. Those are what's going to power it to orbit. Now, that second stage is also what will one day carry cargo, payloads, people, everything that's going to space. It's also going to be responsible for in-space propellant transfer. That's where we're going to take 2 Starships, meet them up in orbit. One will be able to transfer propellant to the other. That's a really critical capability for Starship to do all of these missions beyond low Earth orbit. That also unlocks our ability to send huge amounts of cargo, tremendous amounts of people to destinations far beyond Earth.
Yeah, the Super Heavy booster is designed to launch, separate, flip, and return to the launch site where it can be caught by the chopsticks on the launch tower. Though, as we mentioned earlier, we are not attempting a booster catch today on Flight 9. Starship re-enters the Earth's atmosphere at the conclusion of its mission, steering itself to a vertical landing or catch. And both stages are designed to return to Earth and fly again, making this the first rocket in history that will be fully reusable.
And then just in between the two vehicles is what's known as the hot stage ring. That's a steel structure that really takes the brunt of those ship engines as they ignite, protecting the booster while the ship's still attached to it. That enables us to do hot staging. It's faster, more efficient, kind of shutting everything down and then reigniting. Right now, that hot stage it's single use. It detaches from the booster as it flies back. But in the future, it's going to be integrated right into the top. And then on top of all of that, there's all of the infrastructure that's built up around it to support Starship. We call it Stage 0. That's everything, the launch pads, the propellant farm, launch towers, chopsticks that are catching the booster out of the air, stacking the ship, all of that. And you may have noticed we have a new addition out there near the pad. The orbital launch mount for Pad 2 has officially been installed. That's starting to come together. Just like Pad 1, Pad 2 has a launch mount. That's where you're going to put Super Heavy on top. We also have a launch tower with arms, a little bit shorter on that one. That's going to be used to stack the Starship on top, put the booster on top, catch the booster, catch the Starship. We did put the orbital launch mount on there. That's responsible for routing all of the propellant to the booster ahead of flight. Underneath it, you've got flame deflectors, the water deluge system to just disperse all of those forces. The single piece we just lifted in weighs about 1,060 metric tons, which if you're keeping score at home, that's the same weight as about 10 Millennium Falcons. It's heavy.
That's a lot of Millennium Falcons,
So
Dan.
many.
We're also currently in work on Starship's brand new pad at Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A, and we're hoping to bring that online later this year as well. Tons of progress with Starship so far in 2025, and lots of incredible milestones still coming up. And we are still on track to lift off tonight at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And right now, it's time to say hi to Chris, who's over there repping the West Coast ops today. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, Jesse and Dan, and welcome everyone to West Coast and Hawthorne, California. As you can see behind me, the crowd is gathering outside of our mission control room here in Hawthorne, and the excitement is really palpable as we continue to count down toward Starship's 9th flight test. Now, our mission control room here in Hawthorne usually serves as the mission control room for our Falcon and Dragon missions once they launch from Florida and California. Now, with Starship, all countdown and mission control operations actually use the same flight control team from the same location at Starbase, which you can see on your screen now. But as we develop a vehicle like Starship, we want as many experts watching over its various systems as we can. And that's what we use the mission control room here in Hawthorne for during Starship flight tests like today's. The folks in mission control, which you see now on your screen, are the responsible engineers for Starship's various systems. This includes things like booster systems, stage propellant, our ground stations, flight software, the loads, and the vehicle structures as well. And having this support gives the flight teams in Starbase immediate access to our engineers' knowledge, which is really, really important when we're making informed decisions very quickly in a test program like this. This setup has been great for Starship flight tests so far, as we've handled things like propellant temperature differences, as well as day of launch winds that can affect the loads placed on Starship structures during launch, and particularly during the descent of the Super Heavy booster back to Earth. So having all of these responsible engineers ready to support is crucial during Starship testing, where we place hardware in flight conditions quickly to iterate and make the best and most reliable rocket that we can. So it's definitely a full house, a growing full house here in Hawthorne for our 9th flight of Starship today. Every flight brings us a step closer to a future where Starship is flying multiple times a day. And I'm sure you all feel the same way down there in Texas, Dan and Jesse, but I can't wait to see Starship's launch today. How about you?
Yeah, can't wait to see it, Chris. As you can see, props loading on the vehicle is just a little under 2 miles away from us, and we're really excited. Looking back real quick, so back in March, Starship's 8th flight test saw us catch the Super Heavy booster for the 3rd time ever, another big step on that path to full and rapid reusability. Unfortunately, the Starship upper stage did experience what we call a rapid unscheduled disassembly before it finished its climb to space, which meant we didn't reach all of those additional mission objectives that we had set.
About 5.5 minutes into ship's ascent burn, a hardware failure in one of its sea-level Raptor engines took out that engine, the 2 remaining sea-level engines, and a Raptor vacuum engine. That's 4 of the 6 engines that ship has. This was a different failure than we saw on Flight 7, and the fixes that we put in place did work as expected. So this was a new issue on Flight 8. Now, welcome to iterative engineering.
That's right. Losing hardware is a potential outcome of any test program. That's why we're always prepared with safety measures in place and also ready to have boots on the ground to assist with anything like debris cleanup. We can coordinate with all the necessary parties, organizations, administrations for safety in advance and in an ongoing basis during our test campaigns to plan for as many possible outcomes. Definitely do want to say thank you, though, to the people of the Bahamas, the government of the Bahamas, who worked with us so closely since Flight 8.
We took full responsibility for the cleanup, and in doing so, we had people on the ground in the Bahamas within 12 hours to help with debris recovery. So all that said, we're moving forward in our development cycle with safety at the top of mind, and we fly again today to get this current iteration of ship to space and back.
That's right. Putting hardware in a flight environment as frequently as possible, so you're seeing how things behave all together in the real world. Then you're solving problems as they pop up. That's how SpaceX developed their very first rocket, Falcon 1. Same philosophy was used to develop Falcon 9.
Today, we're looking to get our first re-entry with the latest iteration of ship while intentionally stressing the super heavy vehicle during its return to get data on its boundaries. And by stressing, we mean that we'll be pushing the flight envelope of super heavy as we fly at a higher angle of attack during descent towards the Gulf. Angle of attack in this case means that super heavy is pitched up to maximize drag and slow return. Because of this test, we will not be attempting to catch and recover Super Heavy, which again is flying for its second time today. So for a brief moment, this booster will hold the title as the Super Heavy flight leader.
That's right. All right. A lot still ahead for today. Let's get into it real quick with this overview. As always, everything starts with a liftoff. 33 Raptor engines igniting, Super Heavy pushing itself and Starship into ascent over the Gulf. It's going to continue for about 2.5 minutes before we get to hot staging. Ship will ignite in its engines. Booster will do its boost back burn and begin its flight experiments back for a hard splashdown in the Gulf of America. Meanwhile, ship continues its burn into space.
And ship will remain suborbital. We will be deploying 8 Starlink simulator satellites and then head towards re-entry. We'll relight a Raptor engine as well as test experiments during re-entry, such as missing tiles, metallic tiles, loading the vehicle's flaps, and then ship will attempt a flip maneuver. And if all goes planned, we'll conclude the test with a soft water splashdown in the Indian Ocean. So that's what we have on the menu for Flight 9 today.
Whole lot.
Flight 8's RUD taught us new lessons about Starship hardware, specifically the Raptor engines. And as we touched on earlier, the root cause was traced to a hardware failure in one of Starship's 3 center Raptor engines.
Yeah, just since that flight, we've done more than 100 long-duration Raptor tests at our facility in McGregor. Huge shout out to that team for really putting in the work to better understand what happened. As a result, the engines that are on Starship's upper stage on the pad right behind us have a few changes. One of the key ones we did was additional preload on some of the joints, essentially some additional torquing, a new nitrogen purge system for the engines themselves, and made some improvements to the propellant drain system.
After our first ever Super Heavy refurb campaign, we static fired with all 33 Raptor engines. This was a chance to see all the hardware operating together, and for this flight, our teams had an opportunity to make adjustments or hardware replacements for this first ever reflight of the Super Heavy booster.
And then it was ship's turn. We took it through several static fires. First, we did this short duration single engine burn to simulate an in-space reignition of Raptor using those header tanks, those smaller tanks up in the nose cone. We also completed a longer duration 60-second burn with all 6 engines. So where you're really putting the entire propulsion system that's going to be used for the ship's ascent into space through the paces, making sure everything's working together before we go stack it on the pad.
And in the end, these changes represent the core of our test program. And reflying a booster for the first time is a major milestone, especially so early in the flight test program. Now, Falcon did it in just over 30 flights.
And Starship's doing it today on just its 9th flight. It's not wild just because of how much faster that is, but just how much bigger Starship is. Falcon 9 can lift about 23 metric tons into orbit. Starship is designed 100.
That is so exciting. And on top of that, we're also reflying engine 314 for its third flight, which you might recall is the engine with a pie on the nozzle. And there you can see that engine there. It is a milestone, most definitely, but we do remain focused on getting to the point where no refurbishment is needed between any of the flights.
Yeah, that means we want to launch it, bring it back, look at it, reload propellants, go again. That is really what's key. That is what full and rapid reusability will look like.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad and our continuing countdown to launch. We are now just 19 minutes away from liftoff of Starship on the 9th test flight of the Starship Super Heavy program. It is an exciting day down at Starbase, Texas, an exciting day for all space fans tuning in from around the world. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name is Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad Network, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we're glad to have you joining us live here today for a big day down at Starbase. Flight Test 9 followed by a Starship update from Elon Musk. It was originally scheduled for this morning and delayed till after liftoff. Elon did speak briefly with the everyday astronaut earlier today, and he ultimately said today's test flight is all about the tiles. How will these Starship Super Heavy heat shield tiles hold up? During Flight 7 and Flight 8, we had anomalies basically at almost the exact same moment in flight over the Caribbean, over the Turks and Caicos. This is from Flight 7. This actually exploded up technically in space before making its way back down to the beach in Turks and Caicos. Truly an honor to have it here in our studio. But the big question, can we get past that kind of 8.5 minute mark in flight, get all the way down, and how will re-entry go? Lots of changes continue to be added on each and every flight to both the booster and the ship. This booster, though, the first time one has been caught and reflown. Now, they are going to be expending the booster here today to learn even more from it, but for the first time ever, Starship is reflying a Super Heavy booster, a huge milestone in the program as they continue to work to build the first ever fully reusable, rapidly reusable launch vehicle. Let's send them back into SpaceX Mission Control.
Starship is learning from Falcon with reusability, and now we're seeing Starship do the same thing today. So all eyes on the rocket on the pad, getting ready to launch in just about 17 minutes from now.
That's right. Looking at our levels real quick, we're a little bit more than halfway full on fuel and LOX on the booster, over 80% full on the ship, so we'll have to fill those header tanks. But everything looking good. We're not tracking any issues on the range. As a reminder, we watch sea states, air, and land around the launch site here, and also over in the Indian Ocean where we're going to be doing our reentry. Not tracking any blockers to launch at the moment. Weather is gorgeous, has not been a concern all day for launch. We've been moving through all of our pre-flight checkouts pretty smoothly so far this morning, getting the ship and the booster ready for prop load, making sure guidance, navigation, and control are aligned. Everything's ready to go. You can see with the frost coming off, we're getting pretty full. We started loading all of the propellants on board both ships about 45 minutes or so before launch. They kind of stagger where we start with ship and then move into booster. We're going to continue loading these propellants on board until just about 3 minutes before liftoff. We'll close out on the ship first and then on the booster. But bottom line, everything's looking great. Not tracking any vehicle issues, range issues, weather issues. We're looking really good right now for a launch at the top of our window right at 6:30 p.m. Central.
Yeah, seeing the propellant loading is making this get it. Today is going to be a wild ride for Super Heavy. We're putting the booster through several tests to expand the envelope on its capabilities and get flight data to make its return and catch more reliable. Now, another unique change in today's flight will be the addition of the first ever directional flip of the booster.
That's right. If you followed previous flights and you kind of wonder to yourself, why does the direction the booster flip seem random? Surprise, it's because it was. We've got a couple of views from previous flights where you'll see the booster kind of go in different directions, and nudge the booster in an initial direction. And so the booster would essentially sense that and then lean into it, and it'll react, the engines will gimbal, and then it'll continue the flip. That was the easiest option technically, but you do take some performance hits since you're essentially setting aside propellant to accommodate every single direction for a flip.
Exactly. But if we know which direction we're flipping, then we know how much propellant we will need and can instead use more of the propellant to burn longer during ascent, adding more velocity to ship and increasing how much payload it can ultimately deliver to space.
Yeah, so today I got my trusty Super Heavy here. We're going to intentionally try to flip straight up. So as you're separating from the ship, we want to get to here as you're doing that boost back burn. The fastest way is to just flip straight up and go into it. That's roughly what we did on Flight 5. It's the most direct way to get into that orientation for the boost back burn. What you don't want to do is when you flip all the way down like that, we did that on Flight 7, it takes you in a big loop, uses the most amount of prop, not efficient. We're at the point where we want to start kind of tuning it in and getting some extra performance out of the booster.
Yeah, exactly. That's called optimization.
That's right.
To accomplish this, we made some changes to the hot stage adapter, welding reinforced panels over the vents in the direction that we want the booster to go. So when the ship engines ignite, the thrust will push against the blocked vents, which means that the nudge will be in the direction that we planned for. And then when we go to the next generation of ship and booster, we plan to control the flip direction by fine-tuning the engine startup sequence on the ship.
Yeah, that's not the only flight experiment that we have planned for the booster today. We're not attempting a catch, so we're going to try and gather additional data that's going to improve performance on future boosters. We're also going to try and see how resilient we are to things like losing an engine during the landing burn. By sending the booster out to sea, we're able to do these higher risk tests without risking the launch pad. As you might have heard earlier, we're going to be doing what's called a higher angle of attack. Basically, instead of coming straight down, we're going to tilt up a little bit. That gets you more drag on the booster. You're able to use just aerodynamic forces to slow you down. The slower you're going at the start of that landing burn, the less propellant you need, because really you're just focused on slowing down as much as humanly possible when you fire that up. So by already going a little bit slower, we'll get some benefits to our performance and our reliability on those burns.
Yeah, exactly. And there's definite uncertainty in how well the booster's grid fins and structure will be able to control its flight when we get into higher angles. So don't be surprised if it isn't a smooth descent for the booster down to its splashdown point today. The most important objective of this portion of the test will be getting actual flight data to help anchor our models. Now, we're hoping to fly the next generation of super heavy boosters at even higher angles of attack. So this test today will give us a better idea of what is feasible. Now, on top of all of this, we're going to see how resilient Super Heavy is to engine failures at the most critical times.
Yeah, we're going to intentionally disable one of those 3 center engines and instead use an engine from the middle ring that's kind of right behind it. Those center engines are what we nominally use at the very last part of a landing burn. You're just kind of fine-tuning the booster's path into those waiting chopstick arms. This is going to act as a real-world simulation of a pretty scary situation where engines are not starting at probably the worst possible time, but we're going to do this without risking the pad. And then at the very end of the landing burn, we're going to cut one more engine off and go down to only those 2 center engines. The burn is going to end while Super Heavy is still several hundred feet above the Gulf, so we expect it to make a pretty hard splashdown today. So in all, pretty eventful day for the booster.
And as many of you may know, water landings are actually uncommon for SpaceX. While other launch providers expend all of their boosters after flight, we land and reuse most of ours. All of these tests are going to help us improve future generations of Super Heavy until we reach its fundamental design, a fully and rapidly reusable and reliable rocket. All right, let's check back in with Chris in Hawthorne. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, Jesse, my colleagues here in Hawthorne definitely agree with you. We can't wait to see the Super Heavy perform its second flight and see all of the work from our thousands of engineers and technicians in action today. Now, while this reuse milestone is incredibly important for Starship's development, Super Heavy boosters are not the only vehicles that we reuse here at SpaceX. We're big on reuse, and our Dragon fleet is another example of that reuse. And we actually control those Dragon missions from right here in Hawthorne in the mission control room that we talked about a little bit earlier. For Dragon and our human spaceflight program, this month also marks a big milestone for SpaceX, our 5-year anniversary of human spaceflight. Now, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley got us started back on Demo 2, which was notable for being the first time since the retirement of the shuttle program in 2011 that people launched to orbit from US soil. Now, in those 5 years, we have launched 17 human spaceflight missions, 11 for NASA, and 6 commercial missions, including Polaris Dawn, with our first commercial spacewalk in history, and From-2 earlier this year, which became the first human spaceflight mission ever to explore Earth's polar regions. We've flown a total of 66 crew in those 5 years, and we are expecting that number to grow significantly in the coming years. Now, most recently on our From-2 mission, the crew offered unique glimpses into the orbital spaceflight experience. And this was honestly just so cool to see. Thank you to our Starlink teams for making everything with the From-2 crew shared possible. This honestly made me feel like I was right there with them in Dragon. They were living, they were working, they were relaxing, they were doing their experiments while also having fun, basically just being people and inviting us along for the ride. And that was really meaningful. Being invited up there really showed how these are just the early days on the road to making life multiplanetary. And the vehicle that's going to make all of that happen is Starship. And Dan and Jesse, I don't know about you, but that is definitely a future I have wanted since I was a little kid, and I cannot wait to see us make it a reality.
Yeah, right there with you, Chris. It's the fact that we're getting close to that being reality, that the vehicle that's going to go is sitting on the pad right there. Like, that's endlessly exciting. All of that's going to include sending humans, all of the infrastructure for a permanent presence on Mars. And we're looking ahead to sending the very first Starships to Mars as early as next year.
Yeah, this will help prove that we can actually get to Mars with a focus on learning as much as possible while demonstrating what will be needed for Mars transit and landing. But before we can make life multiplanetary, we have to build the starships that will make this all possible.
That's right. And that's happening right here, Starbase, Texas, the gateway to Mars. This is where we're soon going to be launching up to 25 Starship launches per year from here at Starbase. And the place is changing every single day. We've grown quite a bit just in the last couple of years. There's a couple hundred employees, their families living amongst actual rockets. We're in the process of expanding production and integration. We've got a target of 1,000 Starships a year we're going to try to hit. And recently, we did become a city of our own. We're the first city in Cameron County in 30 years. And that's just going to help us scale more quickly, try to build out the best community possible for all the people that are building the future of humanity's place in space. Starbase, pretty easily one of the most inspiring, exciting, unique places to live and work on the planet. As usual, shameless plug, we're always hiring. Come help us build the gateway to Mars. Visit spacex.com/careers. You can see all of our openings.
And this is my first time in Starbase. And Dan, the Star Factory is a manufacturing engineer's dream. To be able to build a factory like this at such a large scale with such a large scale vehicle is so wild to me. And though I'm just visiting, Chris is hanging out right where I call home base. So let's check back in with Chris in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, everything here in Hawthorne is looking good. The crowd is gathered, really excited to watch the hard work of all of their colleagues come to fruition here for Starship on its 9th flight test. Not tracking any issues. We are excited to watch Starship do its thing today, make it halfway around the world, and test a lot of those critical in-space maneuvers and operations that will be vital for the program's continued operation. So Dan and Jesse, we can't wait for liftoff. Let's have a good flight today.
Thanks, Chris. Now, if you're just now joining us, where have you been? But we're glad that you're joining us now. We are at T-minus just under 6 minutes until liftoff of the 9th Starship test flight. So far, the range is looking good. All the airspace and trajectory area that we are going to be launching through is looking good for our test flight today. Weather has been great. It was a little rainy and windy this morning, but it cleared up. It looks beautiful here in Starbase, and propellant loading continues on both stages.
All right. Yeah, it is continuing. We're a little over 90% full on our booster. We are pretty much full in the main tanks on ship, filling up those header tanks. We're going to continue loading prop for about 2 more minutes. Once we're done with that, you've got just under 11 million pounds of liquid propellant spread across those 2 stages. After we get through all of that prop load, our stage 0 will get ready. The ground systems will go through pushbacks, clearing all of those fluid feed lines back to the propellant farm, getting ready for launch. We did just see they did a flap wiggle check. So the final flap check on the ship. We're doing final alignments of the guidance, navigation, and control system, our thrust vector control, essentially our steering, checkouts of the flight safety system. So everything progressing right now. If we do need to hold, that can come at T-minus 40 seconds. That's a point built into the countdown where we can pause to wait for any final checkouts, pressurizations, anything that we need to complete. We can hold there. We will only hold there if we're tracking an issue. We're not currently tracking anything that will hold us at T-minus 40 seconds. But if you've seen a Starship launch before, they can happen. We can push through them and then launch that day still.
Exactly. But when we do pass through T-minus 40 seconds, a number of events will occur in rapid succession. The ground spin and ignition systems come up to flight pressure, ship goes to internal power, and then after that, the quick disconnect or QD, arm lockout is removed in preparation for retraction just shortly after T-minus 0. And once we pass T-minus 40 seconds, we do still have the ability to recycle the count under certain conditions back to T-minus 40 seconds, and then hold there to assess what happened and see if we can proceed again back down to T0.
Yeah, there are a couple of things, kind of gates in that timeline that if we pass through that and we hit a hold, we'd have to scrub for the day. One pretty visual one will be if the water starts flowing for that deflector system that's underneath the launch mount. That happens right at around T-minus 10 seconds. For flowing water, we can't turn it off after it starts, and if we hit a hold, we're scrubbed for the day. We would need to refill those water tanks. We would also at that point need to refill all of the propellant tanks, as 11 million pounds of propellant is a whole lot. We can typically do that in about 24 hours, so we can always turn around to try again tomorrow. But we are coming up on 3 minutes away from liftoff. We should be hearing that we're closed out of prop load on the ship at this point. Booster coming up shortly.
Wow, the weather just looks amazing there with Starship on the launch pad. Just about 2 minutes and 45 seconds from T0 with a lot of objectives for today. The booster, the Super Heavy booster flying today, will be flying for its second time. Last flight was on Flight 7 and just turned around in 2 flights, which is pretty incredible. I'm super excited to see that booster fly again.
All right, we did just hear we are going to hold at T-minus 40 seconds. So we'll pass along some more information once we hear that reason. But again, that's not the end of the day. We can hold at T-minus 40 seconds for quite a few minutes. We eventually have to start looking at our temperature of all of our propellant on board. That's usually what drives us to, if we've held too long, we have to stand down for the day. So we are expecting a hold at T-minus 40 seconds. Sounds like we're going to be doing some additional checkouts on the booster Raptor while we're at that T-minus 40 second mark. So we will expect to see the clock pause at T-minus 40. And then again, we've got a couple of minutes. They can work through the issues. If we're able to clear them, we can still launch today. If it's something that we can't, we can always stand down, turn around, recycle, fly again tomorrow.
Again, that's really important. This is what terminal count is exactly for, is to be checking the vehicle, monitoring the vehicle systems as it makes its way down to T0. And again, this gives us the ability to catch anything and be able to hold, as Dan has been saying, and recycle if we need to, or pause so that we can work through those issues and see if it's something that we need to stand down for. And as Dan mentioned, we will be holding at T-minus 40 seconds, so in about 20 seconds from now.
Yeah, so we'll hold there. And they'll work through these final checkouts on, sounds like just one of those Raptors on the first stage on Super Heavy, which, as you said, we're reflying it for the first time. 29 of those 33 engines have already been used in a launch, one of which has already launched
twice, and will go for
and
its
is getting ready for its third
time.
Right. And you just heard our flight director for the day, Joe Sliker. He just shared that we are going to hold at this T-minus 40 second mark. Keep an eye on one of those Raptor engines on booster. And if you're just now jumping in, we are holding still at T-minus 40 seconds. Watching one engine, waiting for temperatures to kind of get to a zone that we want them to on one of the engines on the booster, on the Super Heavy booster, getting ready for its second ever flight. We'll just continue to hold. Again, we can hang out here for several minutes. We held for a while on the first attempt last time and then cleared it, and then we triggered a different issue on the ground side.
But again, this is exactly what it's for. This gives us the best chances at success.
And the clock is rolling.
There we go.
All right. T-minus 30. Let's listen in. Watch that first flight proven Super Heavy. Get ready to take off from Starbase.
T-minus. Up to 1. Hit hold.
We did have a hold, and looks like the clock jumped back to T-minus 40 seconds.
All right, so we jumped out. I did not see the deflector go off. So hopefully we were right at around that T-minus 10 second mark.
And if we were before that T-minus 10 second mark, we do have the ability to recycle, as we mentioned earlier, back to T-minus 40 seconds.
So it looked like this time it was a ground side issue. We're taking a look at this real quick. So again, we're back at T-minus 40. We're gonna hold for a little bit. We are still not scrubbed for the day. Give them a couple of minutes to work through this. Again, we can hang out at T-minus 40 for several minutes. Eventually, we start looking at your bulk temperatures and all of your propellant on board the vehicle. We're not actively replenishing the propellant on board Super Heavy and Starship. And so you don't have essentially forever to hang out before things start to warm up. And you do want to make sure your temperature's in a really stable range for a healthy startup on Raptor engines. So they're going to work through this issue. We can continue to hold here for a couple of minutes. What's launch without a little extra added excitement? All right, so cumulatively, we've held for a little over 3 minutes between the two holds. Again, this is a ground side issue on our tower. The techs are looking through the data right now to see if it's something that we can either work through or if it would cause us to have to stand down. So we're continuing to hang out with them, holding at T-minus 40.
If you're just joining us, we did initially hold at T-minus 40 seconds. We continued the count, but recycled before we got to T-minus 10 seconds. And so we're back at a hold at T-minus 40 seconds, waiting for more information. The team is checking out to see if we can continue today. And we're continuing to hold here at T-minus 40 seconds. We've been holding for just about 5 minutes now as the teams evaluate if we can continue to T0 for Flight 9.
All right, so it sounds like we're coming to a resolution. All right, so we are getting to a resolution. We're going to reset everything. All right, so we're going to see the clock. It is now rolling.
Here we go.
We saw an issue with that quick disconnect to the ship. There is a chance that automation will kick us out again if we encounter the same issue. But for now, the clock is rolling. We'll see if we pass around that T-minus 10-second mark. T plus 40 seconds. It's one hell of a sight from here. We see it arcing right over top of us. We see 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on Super Heavy as it starts to ascend skyward. Coming up on maximum aerodynamic pressure, then only about a minute and a half until we get into hot staging.
Wow, Dan, that was incredible. We could feel the building shaking here, feel the vehicle's power. Now we're just about a minute away from shutting down those engines on the booster. Again, this booster is flying for its second time today.
All right, so hot staging coming up a little under a minute. We're going to see all but the 3 center engines turn off on the booster. So our version of MECO, most engines cut off. And then just a few seconds later, hoping to see 6 engines ignite on ship to push it away. All right, hot staging, about 30 seconds. And definitely keep an eye on which way the booster flips. First ever directional flip we're going for today. Should flip straight up. See those engines powering down?
Booster engine cutoff. Ship ignition. Stage separation.
Incredible flip by Super Heavy booster, and you can see those 6 engines, those 3 engines on the ship ignited.
6 healthy Raptors running on ship on its way to space. Peek that engine view. Booster doing the boost back. Chris, how's it looking over there in Hawthorne, man?
It is looking
chamber pressure is nominal.
It is looking absolutely incredible here in Hawthorne. As we said, 6 healthy engines on ship. We've got 13 out of 13 engines on the booster. Now down to those 3, which is what we expect in the final moments of the boost back burn. Now, as a reminder, we are not recovering the Super Heavy booster today. We are instead going to do some
shutdown.
And there we had a good shutdown of the boost back burn. Next up will be the jettison of that hot stage
Ship
ring.
avionics power and telemetry nominal.
Great call out there that everything looking nominal aboard the Super Heavy vehicle, which is returning to Earth. And we're going to be doing some experiments with it, including a higher angle of attack re-entry, as well as some engine tests as it gets closer to the Gulf. We are, again, because of these tests not recovering it, we are sending it to the Gulf on purpose to do those tests. But again, you see the booster on the left-hand side of your screen. You see ship with 6 healthy engines continuing its ascent to its planned suborbital trajectory. Everything going very well so far for Starship's 9th flight. Now 4 minutes, 15 seconds in. Great views from inside of the aft engine area of ship there, looking at those 3 sea level and 3 Raptor engines on the right-hand side of your screen. The booster doing its LOX dump, that liquid oxygen dump. So because we don't need some of that liquid oxygen propellant in its tanks, we vent that propellant out to lessen the booster's mass as it comes in for its landing. Just absolutely gorgeous views watching these 2 vehicles do their respective things in the skies over Texas here today. And Dan, we're approaching the 5-minute mark into the flight. Super Heavy is descending rapidly. What can we expect here in the next few minutes as it does its atmospheric tests?
Yeah, now as we had talked about, Super Heavy might not have a very smooth ride down. We're going to be putting it through this higher angle of attack. So we're kind of pitching it up a tiny bit, increasing drag. We've done this in wind tunnels. We've done this in computer modeling. It shows that sometimes the control isn't great, but only one way to really prove it out, and that's to get real world data. So here comes Super Heavy. It should be igniting for its landing burn in just about 40 seconds from now.
And we are going to relight 13 engines, then bring that down to 3 engines. As we talked about earlier, we will be intentionally shutting down. We will be shutting down one of those 3 center engines intentionally to push the limits of the Super Heavy booster.
Ship Raptor, chamber pressure is nominal.
And continuing to see 6 healthy engines on the ship. 3 sea level and 3 vacuum engines still ignited as the Super Heavy booster is making its way back down to Earth.
We can see those grid fins doing some heavy work.
Booster landing startup.
Ignited for our landing burn. It may have ended with that landing burn. Does look like we lost telemetry from the booster once we started into that landing burn. Did you hear confirmation that the booster did demise? So the booster's flight ending before it was able to get through landing burn, but again, we are not bringing that back. We're expecting it to make a hard splashdown in the Gulf. We were getting live data back the entire time through that high angle of attack flight. So that was something that was really vital for us to get during this reuse. First free flight of booster in the books. All right, ship has about 2 minutes left.
In about 2 minutes, we expect all 6 Raptor engines to shut down. That will be SECO, basically second engine or second stage engine shut off. And these are some incredible views, Dan, from the aft end of the ship, watching as the engines stay ignited with the Earth in the background.
As always, the Starship avionics team, the techs. I think we just heard the booster. But all right, we got about a minute left into this burn. All eyes definitely on ship as we get through the final stages into its ascent. We're expecting it to start to cut those engines off in about 45 seconds.
Terminal guidance.
All right, just about 30 seconds to go. We're in terminal guidance in the final stages of this ascent burn. We did see shutdown of the Raptor engines. We do stagger these, so we do the Raptors first. Those 3 have shut down successfully. Sea level's still running.
Ship engine cut off.
Ship engine
Nominal
cut off,
insertion.
the 3 most beautiful words in the English language.
And great call out that we had nominal insertion. An incredible flight test so far today. We reflew a super heavy booster for the very first time in 9 test flights. Ship is in its orbital trajectory. Again, it's going to remain suborbital for its mission today. But it ignited It ignited all 6 of its engines and made it all the way through SECO just now.
What a moment.
Incredible.
All right, but I mean, that's, still lots to come for the rest of this flight. Per usual, I need to collect myself. Hey, Chris, how's it going over there in Hawthorne, man? How's everybody doing?
I think the elation and the excitement and the happiness at what we just saw achieved carried through across all of our sites. What an incredible view to see Starship back orbiting the Earth just under 11 minutes into our mission. Absolutely exciting to see all of this, and super pumped especially to see all of the team's hard work in action here today. As guaranteed, it has been an exciting evening so far for Starship's 9th test flight. We lifted off a little bit after 6:30 p.m. after a couple of holds that were triggered at the T-minus 40-second mark, but we were able to clear those, one on the Raptor, one on the tower, and we were able to lift off successfully from Starbase. 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on the Super Heavy, all 6 engines lit on Ship, bringing it to its planned suborbital trajectory around Earth. But as Dan said, we've got a lot still coming up in our flight sequence. So coming up at about T plus 18 minutes, 26 seconds, we'll have the first deployment of simulated Starlink satellites planned from Starship. That will be followed at about T plus 37 minutes and 49 seconds by the relight of a single Raptor sea level engine in space. This is going to help us gather data on our ability to do a deorbit burn for future Starship missions that will go orbital. And then, of course, one of the biggest tests yet to come is the new heat shield modifications to Starship. And that'll start with reentry into Earth's atmosphere at about the T plus 45 minute mark, which should take about 16, 18 minutes to complete. And now today's reentry is going to test that heat shield like we said, specifically how Starship will hold up to 100 missing heat shield tiles on its thermal protection system. Now, we purposely took those 100 tiles off over very critical areas of the vehicle to be able to safely test on a flight like this suborbital trajectory into the Indian Ocean what might happen on an operational flight in those areas if we were to lose the primary heat shield tile over Starship. So very critical test coming up. And then after that, we'll have the final descent where we will again be pushing Starship to its limits. We definitely pushed the booster to its limits today to gather data, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing on that ship, seeing how the ship handles various flight conditions that we will need it to fly in as we look to one day soon bring ships back to Starbase for catch and reuse. Now, while there are payload simulators on Starship for deployment today, as we will see in a few minutes, the primary data and the primary payload for today is the data. And today, just like with Starship's previous test flights, that data is coming to us courtesy of our Starlink network. In fact, it is from Starlink that you are seeing these wonderful views of Ship in space right now. So, and I can't wait to see Starlink really provide those epic views and that data transmission during reentry, which is very, very critical to getting that data during reentry. So Dan and Jesse, it's been an exciting day so far. There's more to come as we get ready for Starship's first ever payload deploy. What can we expect next here in the next few minutes?
Thanks, Chris. Just going to reiterate, thank you to the Starlink team for these incredible views today. In a few minutes, Starship will deploy 8 Starlink simulators, similar in size to our next generation Starlink satellites. The Starlink simulators will be on the same suborbital trajectory as Starship, meaning they will passively re-enter the atmosphere, just like Starship. With tests like these, we can see how Starship's payload deploy systems work in flight while ensuring that the simulator satellites pose no safety risk to people on Earth or for other satellites in orbit. Now, this also ensures that any parts of these simulator Starlink satellites that do survive reentry splash down harmlessly in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
And then before we get there, though, we're going to have to open up that payload deploy door. So we've only ever done that one time before. Pretty sure it was Flight 3. Someone on the internet, please check me. But that was the only time we ever opened it. And we've had Starlink simulators on the last 2 flights, but we haven't gotten to this moment yet where we're able to open up the payload door and start deploying these. It's going to be pretty cool. We've got them stacked inside of the Starship payload bay, and we'll have potentially a couple of views. You saw one camera pop up. Oh, there we go. Look inside of the payload bay of Starship. You can see them stacked down in the middle of your view. There's kind of 4 on either side, so they're sandwiched on top of each other, a stack of 4 right behind each other. And then we're going to pop the door open. It's on the right side of your screen, so we'll see that open up and then start firing those Starlink simulators out into space.
We are expecting the payload door to open in a little over a minute from now. And then once that payload door is open, about a couple minutes later is when we will start dispensing those Starlink simulators.
That's
what a
view
great
right
view.
at the bottom of the stack. So should be able to see them kind of firing out from right there. So really cool. And eventually these are going to carry dozens of the next generation of Starlink satellite into space, and those are going to enable some truly insane things in terms of speeds from space and what we're able to do. Starlink's been really great for Starship, obviously. Getting live video back is really cool, but just the amount of high-speed telemetry, everything we're able to get back is insane. And for a development program, that's kind of everything. We're in excess of 130 or 160. My numbers are fuzzy right now, just like my brain is, but well in excess of 100 megabits per second of downlink. And a lot of that gets eaten up by video. We've got dozens of cameras across Starship. We added several more. For this flight, you saw a couple of those as we have essentially 360 degrees. Oop. Open the pod bay door, Hal.
Now we are expecting the payload door to open any moment now. So we're watching out for that. Again, you're looking at the inside of Starship as it's suborbital.
Well, we heard the door open was in progress. It was unable to actuate all the way open, so they are going to close it back up. Hal told me no. He said, I'm sorry, Dan. Can't do that. Looks like we won't get the door open today. But that's okay. This is obviously a test we want to be able to do before we're deploying full-on Starlinks. But the real focus for this, now that we are in space, is getting to that reentry. That is the most critical phase of Starship that we still have to prove out. All right. Well, so it does look like we're not going to be able to deploy Starlinks today, but we should have pretty frequent views from Starship. They might cut in and out every once in a while, but should be pretty regular. We are in darkness right now, so might be a lot of black, but the cool part is when we get to reentry, it's going to be daytime.
Yes, and we did that on purpose so that we can get some live daytime views as ship is returning back to Earth.
All right, so we are going to take a break. Enjoy these views as we get them. Enjoy the tunes. We'll be back in a couple of minutes when we get ready to relight one of those Raptor engines on orbit. See you soon.
What a day it has been so far. There is the view inside the Starship where the door broke again. Didn't think that was going to be one of the milestones of today's flight, but the door broke again. But some incredible views giving us these really first looks at what the future of Starlink deployment system, this Pez dispenser inside Starship, is going to look like. Unfortunately, these fake Starlinks are not going to get deployed here today, which means we are one more mission away from actually getting to see operational Starlink deployments occur. We were hoping to maybe see that with Flight 10 or 11, but it looks like that'll politely get pushed a little bit further down the line. They did confirm that booster demised on its way down earlier than its hard landing. So not too sure what happened with that, but it did definitely impact hard and it definitely landed. We just don't know how in how many pieces, but the first ever flight leading booster completed its ascent and it failed on its recovery, which is still a massive milestone. There's lots more to watch for in today's flight. The next test that will occur during today's demo flight will be the relight of that Raptor engine. That is expected to occur at T plus 37 minutes, so 17 minutes from now. And then we get into the really exciting part of the booster re-entry, which is when we wonder, will these Starship heat shields hold up? And will Starship be able to make a soft landing in the Australia, just off the coast of Australia? As always, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and I'll work on answering those live while we continue through today's broadcast. We will, of course, be listening back into SpaceX Mission Control as well. We are getting the clips of the launch up, so if you want to relive the launch or hot staging or any of those will be available over on the channel shortly here, as well as we continue to follow along with today's live coverage of Starship Flight Test 9. It's gone a lot better than 7 and 8. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that Starlink deployment test over the Caribbean and the Central Atlantic region there like we were expecting. Now we move on to what the next test is, which is that relight of the Raptor engine, and then await the Starship update keynote from Elon following today's test flight, talking about making life multi-planetary. But yeah, you can keep sending in your questions in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad. If you haven't yet, take a moment, make sure you've engaged that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, space news updates, or more, because here at the Launchpad Network, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. Stay with us as we await the reignition of the Raptor engine, another milestone in today's test flight. Stay with us right here on the Launchpad.
we are suborbital, so no matter what, we are going to enter. However, this lowers the chances for it to be a controlled reentry. So if you think back to Flight 3, when we had something similar happen, just the end symptom of a loss of attitude control, we were in a roll by the time we hit reentry. So we are going to re-enter. We should hopefully still have views. The Starlink satellites are pretty robust to still maintaining contact. We've got 4 of those terminals on the vehicle, and they're pretty robust to maintaining contact even when we are in a spin, essentially. So we should hopefully continue to keep live views. It's going to still be dark until we get a little bit closer to entry, as we are a little bit, we're coming up on Africa. I believe we do swing just to the south of that continent. And by the time we start heading out over the Indian Ocean, we'll start heading into a sunrise. So not looking great with a lot of our on-orbit objectives for today, where we were hoping to do the PES deploy and relight an engine, and then really importantly, get into that controlled entry to really put the heat shield through the ringer. Nonetheless, Starship marching forward towards that reentry over the Indian Ocean. So we'll continue to hang with it and give you any updates as things continue to change. Starship, something similar happened, different cause, but same symptom back on Flight 3, where we weren't able to maintain attitude control in orbit. And so we're going to skip the relight of that Raptor engine while we're in space. We are going to still proceed with entry, but as we are not able to control the attitude of the ship, as we get into entry, it will enter in whatever orientation it is in at the time, which does not bode well for the ship's heat shield, as we're not going to be essentially aligned the way that we want to do for reentry. So it is definitely coming down. It is definitely heading to the Indian Ocean, but our chances of making it all the way down are pretty slim. So we'll still get as much data as we can. We're still getting live telemetry, live views from Starlink the entire time, and we'll continue to stick with ship as it continues on. We are about 10 minutes away or so until we start getting into entry, and the light will start to pick up as we cross the Indian Ocean, and we'll start to see a little bit more daylight, and we'll, as always, as long as we maintain that comm link, get some plasma on the way in and start to bring the Starship back through the Earth's atmosphere. So that coming up in about 10 minutes or so. So we'll check back in with everybody in a little bit. into today's flight test. You're seeing the light show start as Starship is getting closer to its reentry. If you're just tuning in, we were able to successfully make it to orbit, run into a couple of issues as we've coasted to our entry point over the Indian Ocean. At this point, we had lost attitude control of the ship and entered into a spin. The team made the call to do what's called passivate the vehicle. So we're essentially venting all of the remaining propellant overboard, and it's going to make an uncontrolled reentry. Important to note, this is a contingency that is planned for, and we clear the zones in the Indian Ocean where these entries could take place. So we're not going to come down exactly where we would have had nothing happened, but we do clear a tremendous amount of space out in the Indian Ocean in the event that we run into this. We understand that there are always risks, essentially, with these flight tests, with the hardware, but we don't really accept any compromise when it comes to protecting people.
And it is one thing to note is we will actually still re-enter in our planned airspace zone, which is good. That is exactly what we planned for. We do plan for if something does go a little bit off nominal, that we have enough airspace cleared out for situations just like this.
Yeah, re-entry is still just that really critical phase that we need to try and gather as much data, as much information as possible. Is a fully reusable heat shield has never been flown before, the history of space flight, and that's something that Starship still has to crack. And so we had a whole range of experiments on this one at this point, and we just started to lose some of our cameras. So it's very possible that we'll start to lose contact with Starship a lot sooner than we would have if it was a nominal reentry. So we are expecting it to break up essentially on its reentry over the Indian Ocean. So not able to do a lot of our on-orbit objectives today, but just the fact that we, got it into space was just a really big moment for a lot of the team.
Yeah, and another thing to note is that Super Heavy did fly for its second flight today. It first flew on Flight 7, and it made it all the way to our shutdown of all the engines and stage separation, getting ship into its suborbital trajectory today. It did ignite its 13 engines, but it did demise at that point. We did plan to fly it back down to Earth at a higher angle of attack, and we do expect it to stress the vehicle a lot more than what we've seen previously. So it's not unexpected that we did lose the booster before we got to the actual landing.
Yeah. So we're gonna continue to hang out and see if we get any updates on ship. It does look like we might be getting some video back soon. There we go. So this is a view essentially on the top part of Starship. You're looking up at the payload bay and towards the nose cone. So views are going to be a little bit scarce potentially, as again, we are in essentially a tumble. We had lost that attitude control. So Starlink, when it's able to connect, able to feed this down. We are at the phase where we would expect entry to start within the next minute or so. So we are entering uncontrolled, but again, we're entering into an airspace and a sea space that is cleared and monitored in advance of launch and before we get to this phase.
And with the views that we are able to see, you are seeing a lot of that plasma build up. During reentry, we do expect the vehicle to see about 1400 degrees Celsius. And there you can see the flap feeling that temperature there, a little bit melting away. But as we expected with the spinning of the vehicle, we are no longer controlling the attitude of the vehicle. So this is now at this point in the test flight, it is expected to see it begin to demise a little bit on its way back down to Earth.
Yeah. And so we'll stick with it for as long as we're kind of getting any reach back from the ship as it starts to make this reentry. But yeah, so it's re-entering actively right now. And again, we did do what's called passivation. So you essentially vent all of your excess propellant overboard before you hit the atmosphere. That's a safety measure we can take on the ship while you still have contact with it. So that was done. It's now coming down in the predetermined hazard area that was cleared ahead of flight. Not controlled, so we're not going to get all of that reentry data that we're still really looking forward to. This is kind of a new generation of ship. It has different flaps, improved heat shield, a whole lot of things that we're really trying to really put through the ringer, as there's a whole lot we still need to learn before we get to kind of the next step that we're hoping for, which is going to be that ship going orbital and eventually coming back here for a catch. So getting through one of these fully is going to be really important. It's not going to be today, but we are just going to stick with the ship, see what else we can learn as it makes its way through the atmosphere and brings an end to the 9th flight test. So we'll stick with it.
Well, if you're just joining us once again, some truly